Hey guys, tonight we drift back into a world where the air smells faintly of crushed roses, cedarwood smoke, and just a hint of goat. You're about to spend a full day, not a glamorous one. Mind you, as a perfume seller in ancient Rome. It's sticky, it's fragrant, and yes, it's mildly exhausting. But let's face it, you probably won't survive this without at least one sandal getting stepped on by a senator's wife in a rush. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And in the comments, I'd love to know where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before the sun. Just as the softest edges of dawn begin to pinken the sky over Saboritha, perfumed quarter of Rome, your room smells vaguely of lavender, not because you're indulgent, but because a spilled jar of oil from last week still hasn't fully evaporated from the floorboards. You rise slowly, brushing sleep from your eyes, careful not to knock over the jars stacked near your bed. Some mornings, you forget you live inside your own stockroom. You pull on your work tunic dyed a deep russet. Not because it's fashionable, but because it hides the inevitable blotches of resin and myrrh that wilted by mid-morning. The fabric scratches your shoulder slightly, crusted as it is with yesterday's patch of dried honey from a failed frankincense blend. Still, it's clean enough for business, and besides, Rome doesn't smell itself. You move toward the brazier to light a small fire. Not for Hittites already shaping up to be a warm day, but for melting the waxes and softening the thick oils that have turned sluggish in the cooler night air. You feed the fire with small twigs and whisper a half prayer to Vulcan that the smoke won't sting your eyes again today. Outside, the city begins to stir. Carts creak. Dogs bark. Someone is already shouting about fresh bread 2 alleys over. You step into your tiny back room to gather today's supplies. Little amphory of almond oil, a carefully wrapped lump of labdanum, and a tiny wooden box holding the last of your rare imported spikenard. It smells like wet temples and forgotten dreams, very popular with the older senators. As you check your wares, you pause beside your prized possession, a small alabaster jar of Egyptian blue lotus oil. Buried under a layer of linen for safety, you only use it for special blends, or when bribing your tax collector. Today may require neither, but you bring it along anyway, just in case. You step outside, stall packs slung across your back like a perfumed turtle shell. The Roman street greets you with its usual mosaic of chaos. Groaning wheels, shouted prices, children chasing a dog that is probably chasing someone else's dinner. Your stall is just a few blocks away if you can dodge the overflowing wine. Cart currently trying to wedge itself between a pottery stand and a philosophical debate happening in the middle of the road. Arriving at your spezza, modest wooden setup under a red awning, you take a moment to breathe in. The air is already warm. Soon, it'll be heavy with heat and scent. You unload your jars, one by one, arranging them by strength, color, and likelihood of breaking, if bumped. Your display is modest: beeswax blocks, tiny funnels, oil-stained rags, and a few polished glass bottles meant only for show. And then, just as you're placing a cluster of scented sachets up front, the wind shifts sand. A stray petal from a fig tree lands in one of your open jars. You fish it out with a sigh. Another almond, maybe. Or just Rome being Rome. Mainstream fact. Roman perfumers weren't just merchants. They were chemists, alchemists, aromatherapists, and sometimes fortune tellers. The famous unguentas sold across the empire were often handmade, stored in tiny ampulla or ceramic bottles, and fetched high prices among the elite. Some formulas were state secrets. Others were family recipes passed down like heirlooms. Quirky tidbit scent was so essential that certain temples banned strong perfumes inside, claiming they distracted the gods. Which might sound spiritual, but really just means someone probably overdid it with the cinnamon oil during a sacrifice. Historians still argue whether perfumers like you were fully accepted in high society, or looked down upon as mere peddlers. Of vanity, you've certainly been treated as both. Some days, a senator nods at your rose blend. Other days, Someone accuses your best musk of being too provincial. But for now, your day begins. The sun is rising, your jars are open, and the scent of crushed bay leaves, warmed sandalwood, and new opportunity floats in the air like a hopeful whisper. You wake to the sound of distant cartwheels grinding over stone and the scent of warm bread drifting in from a nearby taberna. The faint clatter of early morning voices floating through the narrow streets of Rome like a tired orchestra tuning. Up. It's early, just past sunrise, and the golden light of the Roman morning filters through the wooden shutters of your modest but respectable domos, painting long stripes across the tiled floor. You're already behind. A day in the life of a perfume seller does not begin with leisure. Not in a city where odor is currency and freshness fleeting. You stretch stiff limbs and rise, your tunic a little wrinkled from sleep but passable. After all, you're not a senator or poet. You sell smells to people who want to pretend they are. The brazier has gone cold, so you splash your face with water from a clay bowl near the doorway and rub it dry with the hem of your sleeve. Then, without breakfast, without ceremony, you begin the ritual of opening your shop, your tiny slice of scented empire nestled in the Forum Boreum, between a fishmonger with far too much energy and a moneylender who coughs louder than any man you've ever met. As you unlock the wooden front panel and fold it upward to create a makeshift awning, the street breathes to life. Market stalls rise like tents after a storm. Children run barefoot with figs in their hands. A senator's litter glides past, curtained and silent, as if Rome itself pauses for him. You don't. You're stacking clay, amphorae of myrrh, rosewater, and spikenard on the shelf just outside your doorway, careful not to crack the ones with chipped necks. Each one is sealed with wax, labeled in red ink, with a tiny mark that only you can read. Today's task is clear. Sell enough to cover rent, to buy fresh olive oil, and if Fortuna smiles, to put a bit aside for that Cypriot frankincense shipment due next week. You don't hope for much more. The perfume trade isn't glamorous. It's sticky. It's unpredictable. And it's surprisingly political. Did you know, for instance, that some patrician wives won't buy from you if you've been seen laughing too loudly in public? Or if your stall smells of garlic instead of lilies? Yes, that actually happened last week. You made the mistake of helping yourself to a bit of leftover lentil stew from a vendor behind the baths, and your breath betrayed you during a sales pitch. The result, no sale, and a lecture on dignity from a woman who dyed her lapdog's fur with crushed mulberries. Your life, like your scents, is layered, sweet, bitter, complicated. One mainstream fact is that Roman perfumery wasn't just about masks and luxury. It was medicinal, ceremonial, even strategic. A certain blend of resin and basil was said to ease chest ailments. Sandalwood oil on the temples could calm nerves. And let's not forget the soldiers, who sometimes dabbed spiced oils on their armor for luck be. 'Cause nothing says invincible like eucalyptus-infused shoulder guards. Historians still argue whether perfume sellers like you were considered artisans or merely shopkeepers. You'd argue back if you had the time, but instead, you're arguing with a goat. More specifically, with a customer attempting to tie her goat to your stall beam while she samples your lavender sachets. You shoo her away gently, offering a discount if she relocates the beast to the moneylender's post instead. She accepts. He groans. A win for diplomacy. By mid-morning, the sun is full and bright, casting a hot sheen over your wares. You shift the jars to keep them from overheating, and watch as your neighbor, the fishmonger, tosses yesterday's catch into a nearby drain. The smell is the opposite of your profession, and yet here you are, shoulder to shoulder with the enemy of freshness. Still, you nod politely. You once scented a bath oil for his wife, which allegedly cured her migraines, though she swore it. Also gave her prophetic dreams involving figs and flamingos. You didn't ask questions. Another quirky tidbit. Some Roman elites believed that perfume, if applied correctly to the soles of the feet, could travel upward through the blood and improve one's luck. That belief led to a brief but intense fad in sandal scenting, which was as messy as it sounds. You tried selling an experimental citrus foot balm once. It sold well until a local baker slipped on some and blamed you for ruining a dozen loaves. He never forgave you. Business ebbs and flows. Some days you barely sell enough to keep your olive oil from going rancid. Other days, like feast days or wedding seasons, you can't fill amphory fast enough. Today feels average. You sell a tiny jar of marjoram paste to a young woman preparing for her betrothal ceremony. She asks if the scent will make her appear more marriageable. You assure her it does. In truth, it just smells like damp oregano. But belief, like scent, is invisible and powerful. There's a scholar from Alexandria who once told you that the olfactory sense is the most closely tied to memory. That one whiff of a certain herb can bring back entire lifetimes. You think about that as you dab a drop of violet essence on your wrist during a lull. Just to remember a girl you once knew in Iridium who smelled of violets and made you laugh until your ribs ached. She's long gone now, married to a shipwright or a senator's son. Or perhaps to someone who sells perfume in a town where the drains don't flood when it rains. Speaking of which, storm clouds are forming. You tilt your head and sniff the breeze, not out of habit, but for signs of humidity. Your delicate blends will not survive a downpour. As you begin packing the most vulnerable wares back inside the stall's recesses, a familiar figure approaches. Marcus, a baker's apprentice, with a penchant for your cedar-scented beard oil. He looks sheepish, clutches a wax tablet, and says he's here to trade half a loaf of honeyed bread for a refill. You pretend to consider. He ups the offer with a wink. 2 loaves. Done. Barter beats denarii any day when bread is involved. The day inches forward. You make mental notes of which mixtures need restocking, and which customers require follow-up, especially the senator's wife, who asked for a custom blend that won't make her sneeze. You've narrowed it down to a combination of myrtle and almond oil. She either love it or accuse you of sabotage. You'll find out tomorrow. For now, the wind picks up. You fasten the awning, close half the stall, and sip from a skin of watered wine you keep hidden beneath the counter. Not too much perfume making requires a steady hand. You glance at your neighbor. The fishmonger has dozed off on a sack of olives. His fish, mercifully, have been sold. The smell is almost bearable. Almost. Your fingertips are sticky with resin, your sleeves stained with saffron, and your feet ached from standing. But there's satisfaction, Hera, quiet pride in small exchanges, in fleeting luxuries, in the silent power of scent to shape a day, or a mood, or a memory. You lean back for a moment, letting the afternoon pass like warm honey over stone, wondering what stories the evening will bring. The clouds gather thick and gray, like wool dyed in iron salts, sagging low over the rooftops of the Forum Boreum as the scent of distant rain curls its damp fingers through the alleyways. You're used to this weather. Rome always smells different. Before a downpour, the heat loosens the bricks, the wind churns the rot in the gutters, and the air starts to hum like a lyre string about to snap. You move swiftly, instinctively covering your most delicate jars and looping a twine over the folded stall awning. It's not your first Roman summer storm, and it won't be your last. Your hands are practiced in the dance of sudden weather. Secure the amber free, wrap the scented cloths in oiled linen, tuck the wax-sealed perfumes beneath the bench. Rain and scent do not get along. You learn that lesson the hard way during your first year in the trade, when a freak shower turned your patchouli pastes into unusable soup, staining your toga and your reputation in one soggy afternoon. Never again. As the first drops begin to fall, you duck under your awning and watch the market transform. Shouts rise. Stalls rattle. Citizens scurry beneath cloaks and roof overhangs. The sound of sandals slapping against wet stone echoing like 1,000 synchronized heartbeats. Even the proudest toga wearers abandon elegance and dart for shelter, bunching fabric around their knees like panicked chickens. You should be annoyed. The rain usually ruins business. But secretly, you enjoy this. There's something comforting about the way a storm levels everyone, from senator to servant. No one looks dignified with wet feet. You take a moment to light a small brazier inside the stall, letting the smoke mingle with a dried bundle of sage and crushed laurel. It gives off a pleasant herbal warmth that masks the vinegar temps rising from the fishmonger's puddled workspace. You half expect the goat from earlier to return and seek shelter under your bench again. It wouldn't be the first time. Rain also means opportunity, if you know where to look. Some of your best clients appear only when storms cancel garden luncheons or bathhouse parties. Today's storm seems promising in that regard, because just as you're rearranging the cedarwood's chaos, a familiar voice calls your name, low-throaty, and unmistakably lacquered with privilege. It's Livia, Antonia. The widow with a laugh like poured wine, and a talent for spending her late husband's inheritance on luxury oils. She ducks into your stall like a theatrical gust, shaking droplets from her saffron cloak, and scowling at the sky, as though the clouds had insulted her sandals. "I need something that smells like power," she announces, already rifling through your shelf of scented balms with fingers that have never churned butter or lifted a jug. You offer her a small tin of cassia mixed with essence of neroli. She sniffs, considers, then wrinkles her nose. "Too pious," she says. You try another vetiver and spiced fig. "Too hungry," she murmurs. Finally, you offer her your experimental blendimer, blackcurrant leaf, and a trace amount of civet oil. She inhales deeply, closes her eyes, and smiles like a temple cat discovering warm stone. "Perfect," she says. You try not to gloat. It's a mix you've been tweaking for weeks, based on nothing but a hunch and an old Galenic manuscript with half the words smudged out. Still, it worked. You quote a price that makes her left eyebrow twitch, but she pays it anyway, slipping the coin pouch into your hand with a wink. "Power doesn't come cheap," she murmurs, stepping back into the rain like a well-perfumed ghost. One mainstream fact about Roman perfumery: the best oils came from abroad. Arabian frankincense, Egyptian kifi, Indian cinnamon. Rome imported scent the way it imported everything through trade routes, soaked in politics and price gouging. You once met a merchant who claimed his family's camphor came directly from a Persian high priest, and that they stored it in sacred stone jars lined with silver. More likely it was shipped in dusty baskets and picked over by rats, but it sold well enough. Historians still argue whether the Roman obsession with scent was cultural or compensatory. After all, public hygiene wasn't always reliable, and bathing customs, while frequent for some, were inaccessible for others. Did Romans truly love fragrance? Or did they merely need it to survive each other? You'd bet on both. The rain continues in fits and starts, a metallic drumming that hides the smaller sounds carriages splashing. Prayers muttered beneath breath, an argument 3 stalls down about the price of garum. You sip more watered wine and rearrange your jars again, this time simply for the calming repetition. It's not just the scents you sell, it's the comfort of order in a city where chaos blooms like ivy. A quirky tidbit you love to share with the customers in the moodies: that some Roman perfumes weren't meant for the skin at all. There were scented scrolls, fragrant coins, even temple candles infused with perfumes meant to lift prayers toward the heavens faster. Once a nobleman asked you to craft a perfume for his pet monkey. He wanted it to smell like sandalwood and summer peaches. You complied, of course. The monkey bit your apprentice. Still, the job paid well. Around midday, the rain slows, and the sky bruises into a soft lavender. A few brave souls return to the market, damp but determined. You open the stall fully again, hopeful. Business resumes at a gentle trickle. An older man stops to sniff your lemon balm and claims it smells like his third wife. You're not sure whether that's a compliment, but he buys a jar anyway. Later, a group of Vestal novices pass by, giggling behind their hands. One lingers, fingers brushing a vial of rose saffron oil. She doesn't speak, but leaves a single bronze coin on the counter and walks off. You tuck the coin into your tunic. Not all transactions require words. The rain may have slowed your morning, but the afternoon feels fresh, expectant. You even allow yourself to unseal one of your rarer jars and burgeries, mixed with a bit of bergamot. It's not for sale. This one's for you. The scent is warm and strange, a little like old wood and new honey. It reminds you of nowhere and everywhere. That's what a good scent does. It breaks time in two. You lean back, watching as the last of the puddles shrink beneath the sun, the street glistening with dampness and promise. You think about the next blend. Something subtle, something smoky, maybe even something bold. Because Rome will always need new smells. The people forget too quickly, and you, quietly and invisibly, help them remember. By the time you step out into the dusty morning light of the Roman street, your stall already waits, tucked between a fruit seller hawking overripe figs and an older man who makes charms out of bone and worn copper. Your space is modest, but dignified, an awning of faded purple linen overhead, your wooden crates carefully arranged, each bottle gleaming like liquid gems in the rising sun. You adjust your tunic, smooth back a stray lock of hair, and survey your inventory with the seasoned eye of someone who has spent years perfecting the art of scent. There are the classic blends, myrrh and rose for the upper-class ladies, frankincense and vetiver for the temple priests, spikenard oil mixed with almond for those who fancy themselves exotic. Every bottle has its story, its price, and its ideal customer. The air is already beginning to hum with life-enders calling out greetings. Donkeys clopping along the paving stones, children darting between carts with the reckless abandon only youth can justify. You catch the scent of baking bread from a nearby stall and consider trading a dab of your newest citrus blend for a fresh loaf later. But for now, you must focus. The elite will not arrive yet. They come later, in the cooler hours, wrapped in gauze and opinions, but your early buyers are the backbone of your business. One woman approaches, middle-aged, sunburnt, her scarf askew, and her mood bristling. She wants something to cover the smell of her husband, who works in the tannery and brings home the stench of goat hides every night. You suggest a cedar and sage blenderthy, pungent, grounding. She sniffs, nods, haggles, and finally pays in a mix of worn coin and barter. A pot of olive paste you didn't ask for but will probably use. As she leaves, a younger man steps forward, twitchy and full of opinions, asking if you've heard the rumor that a famous perfumer in Alexandria has discovered a way to distill lightning into scent. You smile politely, because this is not the first nor the last absurd claim you'll hear today. Historians still argue whether Roman perfumers were seen more as artisans or mystics, especially given the elaborate rituals surrounding their trade. Scent was deeply tied to status, to ceremony, to the gods themselves. Some believed that to smell good was to be closer to divinity, while others simply didn't want to stink in a crowd. As the sun rises higher, the street becomes a tapestry of scents, sounds, and stories. A group of boys walks by, shouting a chant about a fishmonger who fell asleep in his own barrel. An old woman clutches a bottle of jasmine oil like it's her last treasure. You help a temple acolyte choose a calming blend for his sleepless mentor, and offer a discount when he shares a fig. The bottle you give him is light, floral, with a twist of lavender and mint, a whisper of peace in a hectic world. Every transaction is a balance between performance and practicality. You are not just selling oil. You are selling escape, memory, transformation. A dab on the wrist can summon a long-dead lover, or convince a senator's wife that her third bath today was not in vain. Your hands move with efficiency, born of habit, but your mind drifts, wondering what it must be like in the perfume houses of the Palatine Hillware gilded amphory line. The walls and formulas are whispered like state secrets. You've heard tales of perfumes that cost more than a horse, made from ingredients brought in on ships with hulls heavy with saffron and silks. Some say Cleopatra's own perfumers invented a blend so intoxicating it caused men to forget their own names. Others claim she wore no scent at all, and let her legend do the work. Scholars still debate whether the famous Kefi blend truly contained over 20 ingredients, or if that was simply a flex from the scribes. You shake the thought, and return to the present. An older gentleman is eyeing your lemongrass extract. Suspiciously, he asks if it wards off lice. You say yes. He buys too. Not every sale is romantic. A stray cat slinks under your stall, tail flicking, eyes narrowed in appraisal. You toss it a sliver of dried fish from your satchel and whisper a blessing. It blinks, unimpressed, but stays. You've earned its grudging respect. As midday approaches, the light turns harsh and unforgiving. You draw the awning lower and dab a bit of rose water on your own neck, more for comfort than display. A slight breeze stirs the fabric, lifting the edge of your tunic, and you remember briefly, sweetly how once, long ago, someone said you smelled like a garden waking up. You pack that memory away and prepare for the next round of customers. There is always another blend to bottle, another story to listen to, another moment to create in amber and oil. You shift your weight, flex your fingers, and smile, because despite the heat, despite the aching feet, despite the occasional flea-bitten skeptic who insists perfume is a waste of coin, you know that what you do matters. Not just to you, but to the world. You help make smell just a little bit more bearable. By the time you step out into the dusty morning light of the Roman street, your stall already waits, tucked between a fruit seller hawking overripe figs and an older man who makes charms out of bone and worn copper. Your space is modest, but dignified, an awning of faded purple linen overhead, your wooden crates carefully arranged, each bottle gleaming like liquid gems in the rising sun. You adjust your tunic, smooth back a stray lock of hair, and survey your inventory with the seasoned eye of someone who has spent years perfecting the art of scent. There are the classic blends, myrrh and rose for the upper-class ladies, frankincense and vetiver for the temple priests, spikenard oil mixed with almond for those who fancy themselves exotic. Every bottle has its story, its price, and its ideal customer. The air is already beginning to hum, with life vendors calling out greetings, donkeys clopping along the paving stones, children darting between carts with the reckless abandon only youth can justify. You catch the scent of baking bread from a nearby stall, and consider trading a dab of your newest citrus blend for a fresh loaf later. But for now, you must focus. The elite will not arrive yet, they come later, in the cooler hours. Wrapped in gauze and opinions, but your early buyers are the backbone of your business. One woman approaches, middle-aged, sunburnt, her scarf askew, and her mood bristling. She wants something to cover the smell of her husband, who works in the tannery and brings home the stench of goat hides every night. You suggest a cedar and sage blend, earthy, pungent, grounding. She sniffs, nods, haggles, and finally pays in a mix of worn coin and barter. A pot of olive paste you didn't ask for, but will probably use. As she leaves, a younger man steps forward, twitchy and full of opinions, asking if you've heard the rumor that a famous perfumer in Alexandria has discovered a way to distill lightning into scent. You smile politely, because this is not the first, nor the last absurd claim you'll hear today. Historians still argue whether Roman perfumers were seen more as artisans or mystics, especially given the elaborate rituals surrounding their trade. Scent was deeply tied to status, to ceremony, to the gods themselves. Some believed that to smell good was to be closer to divinity, while others simply didn't want to stink in a crowd. As the sun rises higher, the street becomes a tapestry of scents, sounds, and stories. A group of boys walks by, shouting a chant about a fishmonger who fell asleep in his own barrel. An old woman clutches a bottle of jasmine oil like it's her last treasure. You help a temple acolyte choose a calming blend for his sleepless mentor, and offer a discount when he shares a fig. The bottle you give him is light, floral, with a twist of lavender, and meant a whisper of peace in a hectic world. Every transaction is a balance between performance and practicality. You are not just selling oil. You are selling escape, memory, transformation. A dab on the wrist can summon a long-dead lover, or convince a senator's wife that her third bath today was not in vain. Your hands move with efficiency, born of habit, but your mind drifts, wondering what it must be like in the perfume houses of the Palatine Hillware, gilded amphory line. The walls and formulas are whispered like state secrets. You've heard tales of perfumes that cost more than a horse, made from ingredients brought in on ships, with holes heavy with saffron and silks. Some say Cleopatra's own perfumers invented a blend so intoxicating it caused men to forget their own names. Others claim she wore no scent at all and let her legend do the work. Scholars still debate whether the famous Kiffy blend truly contained over 20 ingredients, or if that was simply a flex from the scribes. You shake the thought and return to the present. Older gentleman is eyeing your lemongrass extract. Suspiciously, he asks if it wards off lice. You say yes. He buys too. Not every sale is romantic. A stray cat slinks under your stall, tail flicking, eyes narrowed in appraisal. You toss it a sliver of dried fish from your satchel, and whisper a blessing. It blinks, unimpressed, but stays. You've earned its grudging respect. As midday approaches, the light turns harsh and unforgiving. You draw the awning lower and dab a bit of rosewater on your own neck, more for comfort than display. A slight breeze stirs the fabric, lifting the edge of your tunic, and you remember briefly, sweetly, how once, long ago, someone said you smelled like a garden waking up. You pack that memory away and prepare for the next round of customers. There is always another blend to bottle, another story to listen to, another moment to create in amber and oil. You shift your weight, flex your fingers, and smile, because despite the heat, despite the aching feet, despite the occasional flea-bitten skeptic who insists perfume is a waste of coin, you know that what you do matters. Not just to you, but to the world you help make smell just a little bit more bearable. You drift from the window at last, your limbs reluctant, but your eyelids heavier than you realized. The last of the twilight has slipped below the rooftops, and the flickering oil lamp casts gentle shadows that dance along the plaster walls of your room. You move slowly, savoring the quiet, because this is the part of the day that belongs only to you. No customers, no bargaining, no spilled myrrh, or questions about which scent will make a senator fall in love. Just silence tinged with the faint perfume of everything you've touched. You reach for the wooden comb resting on your shelf, its worn teeth polished smooth by years of use. The act of drawing it through your hair is automatic now, slow, methodical, one strand at a time. It doesn't detangle much, but it reminds your body that the work is done. It's time to unwind. Your room isn't large, but it's yours. A small cot in the corner with linen sheets that smell faintly of sage. A low table cluttered with bottles, scrolls, and the half-eaten pomegranate you never finished at lunch. The air still carries the ghost of sandalwood from earlier, but now it's joined by the soft bitterness of the night breeze, wafting in from the Tiber's direction. Rome never truly sleeps. You can still hear the occasional bark of a dog, the wheels of a cart that someone's pushing too late, and the faintest music from what you suspect is an illegal tavern 2 blocks down. But inside these walls, you've carved out stillness. Even in a city built on noise and ambition, you've managed to find a pocket of peace. Mainstream fact: many Roman citizens lived in apartment style, housing known as insulae. They varied in quality, with the wealthier homes on the lower floors, and the poorer, riskier rooms perched higher. Fires were common, plumbing was rare, and neighbors were close, sometimes too close. Historians still argue whether the daily life of a small tradesperson in ancient Rome leaned more toward struggle or comfort, survival or modest satisfaction. But as you sit now, unwinding in your modest home, above the baker's warmth, you feel neither poor nor pitiful. You feel human, worn down maybe, but full. You walk slowly to your storage chest, an old thing with squeaky hinges, and a lid that never quite shuts, and lift it to check your supplies for tomorrow. You keep your rarest ingredients here, wrapped in linen and tucked in terracotta jars. Frankincense granules from Arabia, stored like sacred grains. A vial of blue lotus oil from Egypt, its scent still hauntingly sweet. Crushed orris root, dried violets, even a pinch of saffron, wild indulgence you bartered for after making a priest's wife smell like piety, and plum wine. You count what you have left, mentally rearranging tomorrow's blends. You'll need more olive oil base, and you should really track down more cedarwood resin. Perhaps a visit to Gaius the importer, he still owes you for that vial of rose you swapped for his sister's wedding. You sigh. The day never ends, it only reshapes itself. A quirky tidbit: some perfumers in ancient Rome created signature blends, so unique they were recognized by scent alone. Much like modern perfume houses. But unlike today, secrecy was paramount. Formulas were guarded like state secrets, and apprentices were sworn to silence with oaths, and, in extreme cases, even minor curses. You've never gone that far, but you have noticed a few younger traders sniffing too closely at your jars lately. Maybe it's time to change a ratio or two. Keep them guessing. You begin your evening cleaning, a gentle process, never rushed, wiping the necks of bottles, reorganizing the scented sachets used to ward off moths, brushing out the shallow mixing bowl where today's failed lemongrass benzoin experiment ended up. Even the failures smell oddly beautiful once you've let go of frustration. You light a cone of dried lavender, and place it in a small ceramic burner, watching as a thin tendril of smoke begins its upward spiral. It smells like late summer, like warm sun on old stone, like your grandmother's garden in Ostia, where you first learned to crush petals between your fingers just to see what they became. You step back and breathe it in, letting your shoulders drop. There's nothing left to do tonight but rest. You peel off your tunic, trading it for a softer shift, and slide beneath the linen blanket on your cot. It's warm enough tonight that you only need one layer. The pillow beneath your head smells faintly of thyme. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you simply listen. The flickering of the lamp, the low creak of the floor as the baker stomps about below, likely preparing dough for tomorrow's sunrise batch. A pigeon coos somewhere in the rafters, sounding entirely too pleased with itself. You smile. Tomorrow will bring the same challenges. Customers asking for potions you don't sell. Markets too loud. Ingredients too rare. Oil spills, pinched coins, and that one client who always wants something with musk, but not too musky. And yet, somehow, you'll manage it all again. Not because you must, but because it is your rhythm. The way some pray or sing or paint, you blend. You make the unseen known through scent. You give memory a form, and in doing so, you give your life its shape. As your breathing slows and your muscles melt into the mattress, you let your thoughts meander through the clinking glass, the open stalls, the sunlight dancing on perfumed oils, and the deep, secret pride of knowing you've brought something soft into a hard world. You may not change the empire. You may never be remembered in marble. But tonight, your world smells like lavender and fig leaves, and that surely is enough. You stretch your arms as the first sliver of sun creeps over the rooftops, casting golden light on the whitewashed stone of your workshop's inner walls, still cool from the night air. The morning is fragrant, already layers of scent drifting in from the nearby bakery's barley loaves, the seaweed-laced breeze off the Tiber, and most important to you, the resinous earthy notes from the amphory tucked carefully behind your shop's curtain. Today's goal is the same as every other day. Sell a perfume that doesn't just smell pleasant, but whispers status to those who wear it. Your shop, nestled in a bustling side alley of the Vicus Tuscus, sees a mixed clientele: wealthy matrons in dyed wool stolas, and tourists from Gaul, who find the Roman way of smelling oddly extravagant. You've already begun laying out the day's selection on a low counter made of cedarwood, burnished smooth by years of use and oil. Each bottle you touch carries its own tiny history. Here's the myrrh you traded for 3 weeks ago with that Phoenician dealer, its thick molasses-like texture, giving it that deep, smoky aroma, prized by older Roman women, with a taste for ceremony. There's the batch of rosewater, delicate and floral, steeped just last week from petals plucked at dawn from your cousin's estate garden. And of course, the bestseller among fashionable youths, the blend with imported cinnamon and crushed iris roots, meant to seduce or at least signal that one bathes regularly. You clean each small glass flask with a piece of linen, smiling to yourself at how different your work is from the perfumers of the Forum. They cater mostly to senators and their egos, layering the air with perfumes too thick to enjoy. You, however, sell nuance. At least, that's what you tell customers. The first knock at your shutter is early, probably irregular. You pull aside the curtain and greet Octavia, a young widow known equally for her black shawls and her fondness for gossip. She enters the shop with practiced grace, glancing around the room like someone who might, at any moment, discover something terribly scandalous. She fingers a bottle and asks in hushed tones if you've prepared the memory scent perfume blended with spikenard and her husband's last used olive oil. You nod solemnly, fetching a sealed vial from behind the curtain. This scent, while melancholic, earns you the most loyal customers. People trust you with their emotions, not just their noses. Historians still argue whether Roman perfumes were truly about attraction, status, or even religious rituals. There's evidence for all three. Some scholars believe each family had its own blend, like a scented signature. Others claim the real reason for perfume proliferation was the smell of urban Rome itself, especially in the summer. But you're fairly certain that, for most of your clients, it's about identity, who they are, or who they want to become. After Octavia leaves, Murmuring thanks and a promise to return next week, you sit on your stool and record the mornings. Sail on a wax tablet. Your handwriting is neat, pressed deep with a stylus so you don't forget the proportions. 3 parts myrrh, 1 part olive oil base, 2 pinches of powdered sandalwood. You've developed your own shorthand, a mix of Latin and pictograph steeny curls for floral notes, jagged strokes for sharp scents, like vinegar or pine. The shop stays quiet for a moment, and you enjoy the silence. The clatter from the street fades under the weight of your concentration as you begin preparing the next blend, something new. Perhaps UI, a tiny amphora, containing orris root, steeped in white wine, a method you read about on a scroll lent by a friend in Ostia. As you measure and grind, the room fills with a soft, powdery scent. Pleasant, but not too sweet. The kind of perfume a modest teacher might wear respectable, not showy. You imagine your future customer now, a middle-aged man with ink-stained fingers and a fondness for clean sandals. As you experiment, your apprentice, a freckled boy named Lucius, finally arrives, apologizing with a sheepish look and an armful of freshly cut rosemary. You wave him in, too focused to scold. Besides, the rosemary is for a special request an oil infusion for the gladiators training across the river, said to help their joints. Whether it works or not, you don't know, but the gymnasiums, Lanista swears by it and pays well, which is all the science you need. Lucius helps grind the sprigs while you heat a clay pot of base oil over a low flame. The scent builds slowly, the warm, green aroma of crushed herbs mingling with the woody fragrance of the shop itself. Occasionally, a drop bubbles to the surface and pops, releasing a tiny cloud of scent like a whisper from an ancient garden. While the rosemary stews, you tell Lucius stories, half-true tales about legendary perfumers of old, like Marina of Athens, who supposedly created a scent so powerful it made a general abandon battle. Lucius laughs, and you remind him, as always, to stir clockwise. Not because it matters, but because rituals comfort people. Yours is a life of rituals, warming the shop with coals before customers arrive, tasting new oils on the back of your hand, writing notes before noon and never afterward because the wax gets too soft in the heat. And it is these little habits that shape your day, layer by layer, like scent upon skin. Just as you're pouring the rosemary oil into a sealed jar, another customer arrives, this one unexpected. A portly merchant, in bright purple trim, trailing the scent of salted fish and ambition. He demands something suitable for senators, and gestures broadly, as if half the forum might squeeze into your shop at any moment. You smile and reach for your Imperium Blenda, mix of cedar, honey, and imported oud, expensive, heady, and completely overwhelming. He sniffs, nods, and buys 2 bottles without haggling. As he leaves, you and Lucius exchange a look. You'll need to make more of that one, even if it offends your nose. The sun climbs higher, and so do the smells of the city. But here, in your small workshop, it's a quiet world of your own making. A place where memory, trade, and desire are bottled with care and sold by the dram. You glance again at the scroll. From Ostia, there's a new recipe there involving mint and fig milk. Strange. Maybe you'll try it after lunch. The midday lull settles over Rome like a soft woolen blanket left too long in the sun warm, slightly itchy and unavoidable. You feel it in your limbs as you rise from your stool and stretch, the air dense with the mingled fragrances of your trade. Lucius has gone to fetch some flatbread and olives from the market, his daily task, though he always returns with something else tucked under his tunic, usually a honeyed fig or news he's overheard. For now, the shop is yours again. You use the quiet moment to step behind the curtain and into the cramped back room, where rows of clay pots line narrow shelves, each carefully labeled in your neat hand. The scent here is stronger, almost dizzying, a compressed symphony of history in every amphora. Frankincense and juniper, aged oils, ancient extracts, dried petals, curled like old secrets. You run your fingers lightly across the shelf, pausing at a jar that still smells faintly of sea fennel, its briny bite cutting through the sweetness in the air like a salty breeze in a garden. You remember the old woman who requested that blend, swearing it reminded her of home in the coastal provinces. That was years ago. She never returned, but her memory lingers with every whiff. Historians still argue whether Roman perfumery was more art or science. Some say the proportions were carefully measured, guided by scrolls passed down through guilds. Others claim the most revered blends came from instinct and trial and error. You lean toward the latter. You've ruined enough batches in your time to know that sometimes the best scent is the one you didn't mean to make. The back room is also where you keep the rarest ingredients locked inside a cedar chest, tucked beneath the lowest shelf. You kneel now to open it, breathing in the deep, sharp aroma of the wood itself, before lifting the lid to reveal a trove of tightly stoppered bottles. One contains a sliver of ambergris, cloudy and soft, like fossilized thunder. Another, a tiny spoonful of musk-infused oil, that cost more than your neighbor's entire wardrobe. These are not for the average customer. These are for magistrates, foreign dignitaries, and occasionally, curious philosophers who want to know what truth smells like. You've made special blends for them all. One senator asked for a scent that would make his enemies nervous. You gave him something with vetiver and smoke. Another woman's striking quiet did something that no one would remember, but everyone would notice. You gave her bergamot, a touch of violet, and a hint of clove. She left without paying, but you didn't mind. The blend still haunts the back room, like an unresolved melody. You're just refastening the lid of the chest when Lucius bursts back in, out of breath and holding a parcel wrapped in linen. From the east, he says between gasps, just off. The trader's boat galbanum, I think, and a letter. Your eyebrows rise. Galbanum is rare, more resin than perfume. It smells somewhere between crushed pine needles and neglected temples. You take the bundle carefully, inhaling before unwrapping the cloth. The scent hits like a forest argument, sharp, green, and full of strange tension. Yes, this will do. Maybe a blend with rose, or even fig. Something that tastes like dusk. Inside the folds is also a small note. Written in a flowing hand you recognize immediately, your brother. Stationed in Alexandria, always sends ingredients when he can, though sometimes, with strings attached. You read the message aloud. Try not to waste this one. A priest said it wards off headaches and suitors. You smile, typical. And yet, his gifts often become your most popular blends. The afternoon light dims slightly as clouds pass overhead, softening the beams that had earlier made the oils shimmer like colored glass. You move back into the front room, setting out the new galbanum on your table. It deserves a trial. You mix a small amount with rose oil, letting it sit while you chew slowly on the flatbread Lucius brought. The combination is ... Not bad, just unexpected. Like smelling a garden while wearing heavy armor. You tweak the ratios, drop by drop, listening to the bubbling pot behind you like it's humming advice. Somewhere outside, a caged bird sings a short, melancholy note. You pause to listen. The city breathes through its details as you blend. A new customer appears, a middle-aged man with sand-colored robes and skin weathered from sea air. He introduces himself as a spice trader from Rhodes, drawn to your shop by reputation. He's seeking a gift for his wife, something delicate but memorable. You nod, gesturing for him to sit as you bring out your trial blends. You let him sniff the galbanum and rose combination, then one with crushed almond and orange peel, and finally a blend with saffron and vanilla. He chooses the second. He says it reminds him of her laughter. You bottle it carefully, sealing the stopper with beeswax before handing it to him. He bows his head slightly in thanks, and leaves you with a small pouch of cinnamon bark in exchange. No coin, just cent for cent. That, in your world, is a fair trade. The day stretches into late afternoon. You spend the next hour cleaning the workspace, filtering the latest infusions, and putting away the more delicate ingredients before the evening heat settles. Lucius sweeps the floor with more enthusiasm than precision, knocking over a flask that thankfully remains unbroken. You remind him again that broken vessels mean bad luck. He groans and apologizes. You pat his shoulder. At least he cares. And honestly, you were worse at his age. Before closing, you prepare the display for the next day, a row of small flasks with clean linen labels, arranged from lightest scent to heaviest. You light a small cone of incense and place it near the curtain, letting the smoke drift lazily across the shop. It's sandalwood, sweet and grounding. A scent that whispers, rather than shouts. A scent that says, this is not the forum, not the battlefield, not the Senate floor. This is a space of quiet power, of memory, of choice. You sit again, journal, open, stylus ready, and record the day's notes, what sold, what didn't, which blends need tweaking. You pause halfway through a sentence, watching the sun melt down into the horizon through the high slat of the window. Rome never really sleeps, but this moment, it feels like a breath. The moment between inhale and exhale, between customer and memory. Evening arrives in Rome with the subtle ceremony of a slow-moving tide casting gold and copper light through every colonnade, softening the voices that fill the narrow alleyways with laughter, trade, and domestic rustlings. The perfume shop, tucked like a secret between a bakery and a copper merchant's stall, hums quietly now. You leave the door open, just a little, to let the cooling air sweep in and mingle with the aromas still hovering from the day's work. The city smells different at this hour. Less dust, more hearth smoke. Fewer olives and figs, more baked bread and charcoal. You inhale slowly. The night is coming, and so is the second wave of customers, those who prefer to do their shopping in moonlight, and they're often the most interesting. The first to appear is a familiar figure, the widow, Aurelia, clad in a deep saffron stola, always walking like she owns every cobblestone under her sandals. She doesn't smile much, but she trusts you. That's something, she asks, as she always does, for the same scent-sweet myrrh and cedarwood, with a drop of crushed iris root. You never ask why. Some say she wears it in memory of her husband. Others claim she was once a priestess in Ostia. You hand her the small vial, already prepared. She nods once and slides a silver denarius onto the table. You'll outlive us all, she mutters. You're not sure whether it's a compliment or a warning, but you accept it either way. She's followed not long after by a pair of young twins wide-eyed, chattering no older than 13. They want something fun and smells like festivals. You mix something quickly from orange blossom, honey, and a tiny pinch of crushed fig leaf. They squeal when they smell it, then argue about who gets the bigger bottle. You end up making a second, just to keep the peace. They leave smiling, already planning how to wear the scent to the next public feast. Their joy lingers longer than their footsteps. Outside the lamps are lit. Torches flicker in the wind. Their dance reflected in the polished glass of your bottles. Lucius has gone home for the night. His mother worries if he's latent. You're alone again with your tools, your thoughts, and the deepening quiet. You begin the slow ritual of end of day blending. These are not customer orders. These are experiments, personal, sacred, a quiet space in which you are allowed to play, to imagine, to invent. You uncork the small vial of galbanum you received earlier, adding a drop to a blend of labdanum and clove. It's daring, maybe too much. You dab a little onto a cloth and wave it under your nose. The result is bold, earthy, strange, like incense left too long on the coals. You wrinkle your nose, then make a note to revisit the idea with a touch of lemon balm to lighten it. Historians still argue whether Roman perfumers pursued novelty, or refinement, above all else whether pushing boundaries was celebrated, or if purity of scent remained the ideal. You suspect it depended on the client, and the courage of the maker. You think of the Syrian trader who once brought you a vial of blue lotus, extractic dark, and sticky like syrup. He said it made men dream clearer and women weep slower. You weren't sure what that meant, but the scent itself was so haunting, so oddly floral, with a bitter edge, that it became the basis for one of your most mysterious blends. That's what perfume does, after all. It plays tricks with memory. It lingers where words fail. A low knock startles you from your reverie. You glance at the door, just ajar, and call out softly. The figure who enters is cloaked, face hidden. Voice low, a woman, clearly, but guarded. She asks for something invisible, but undeniable. That's all she says. You nod, gesture for her to wait, and begin. This is your challenge now. You reach for ingredients, like a painter selecting. Pigments, heliotrope for softness, black pepper for spark, a whisper of cinnamon leaf to trail behind the senses. You bottle it without commentary, She lifts it, nods without speaking, and places a small carved token on the table in payment. When she's gone, you examine it. Ivory, etched with the profile of a lion. You slip it into your drawer, alongside other curiosities and unspoken stories. The lamps burn lower. The shop grows warmer, despite the cooling air outside. You open the shutters just a crack, letting the scent of baked earth and distant cooking fires enter. Rome at night is full of small, secret sounds. The shuffle of sandals. The distant clatter of a dropped amphora. A couple arguing softly near the fountain. You sit and listen to it all, one elbow on the counter, breathing in the mingled remnants of rose, saffron, and myrrh. Your hands smell of a dozen stories. Some you'll remember, some you won't. You take up your stylus again and write a few final notes into your ledger. Widow cedarwood, unchanged. Twins fig leaf, good for youth blends. Mystery blend test, with lemon balm. You write quickly now, eager to finish before your fingers stiffen with fatigue. One last entry reads, simply, no scent, stays the same overnight. Tomorrow, start again. Just before closing, you walk once more into the back room and check the sealed jars. Nothing leaking, no pests. The cedar chest is locked, the rare ingredients accounted for. You snuff the incense cone, extinguish the lamp, and return to the front. There, you place a clean cloth over the counter and turn the shop sign to its sleeping face. You don't bolt the door after all. Nothing valuable here could truly be stolen. Not the stories, not the instincts, not the scents you've already forgotten. The moonlight now reaches across the threshold, pale and silvered, like spilled perfume on stone. You step out into it, pulling your shawl around your shoulders, walking slowly through the emptying streets. You pass the bakery, still fragrant with warm crusts, and the copper stall, now dark. A cat slinks by, rubbing against your ankle, then disappears into a shadow. Back at your small apartment, you climb the stairs carefully. The wood creaks. You light a taper, make a cup of watered wine, and sit by the window. From here, Rome looks smaller, kinder. A city of rooftops and possibilities. You breathe in, and even now, away from the shop, your skin smells faintly of jasmine and laurel. You smile to yourself. Tomorrow, you'll invent something new, or try, or fail, and try again. Either way, you'll be there, at the corner shop, with the scented door and the flickering lamp, the place where time drips as slowly as oil, and stories are kept not in books but in bottles. The Roman night has settled like a velvet cloak over the city, and you sit near the open window of your modest upper-floor apartment, sipping slowly from your small clay cup of wine and water, not for pleasure but for the comfort of routine. Outside, the street lamps flicker in patterns you've come to recognize, and somewhere below, someone is singing softly off-key, but sincerely. Your muscles ache from the day's quiet labor, but in that satisfying way that only exhaustion can bring. You pull your shawl tighter around your shoulders and take a deep breath, catching the faintest trace of heliotrope still clinging to your fingertips. Even away from the shop, your hands whisper of the stories you bottled earlier. That's the thing about being a Roman perfume seller. Your work seeps into your skin, lingers in the folds of your tunic, follows you home like a loyal, invisible pet. It's not unpleasant, but it is ever-present, and you've learned to live. With that, you set the cup down gently, so as not to wake the wooden table. It's old, like most things in your apartment, second-hand, third-hand, who knows anymore, but dependable. The only sound now is the low hum of the city breathing. There's no rush to sleep, not yet. First, your nightly ritual. You go to your storage chest and retrieve the worn notebook where you record your personal blends. This one is different from the business ledger. No names, no client notes. Just sent recipes you've never sold, never explained, never dared to bottle publicly. Experiments, daydreams, failures. Some are no more than odd lists of ingredients. One page just says, smoke plus honey, plus tears of a basilisk, in your scrawled handwriting. A joke from years ago, when you were learning how to identify spikenard blindfolded. That was the kind of game you and your first teacher used to play guess the blend by scent alone, or end up eating a raw olive. As punishment, you flip through the pages slowly, stopping on one you haven't looked at in a while. A blend inspired by the Tiber River after rainfall, muddy, green, earthy, but touched with sweetness. You called it after the storm, and you remember trying it once on the hem of your sleeve. It made you feel oddly comforted, even though others found it too strange. Historians still argue whether Romans valued personal scent more as a luxury, or as a mask, something to show off, or something to hide behind. You think the truth is both. For some, a bottle of perfume was the closest thing they had to armor. For others, it was a mirror. You closed the book and light a small lamp, one of the ones made from molded clay. Its surface chipped, but functional. The flame is low, soft. The kind of glow that doesn't banish shadows, just rearranges them politely. You reach for your comb-carved bone, smooth with edge, and begin slowly pulling it through your hair. Another ritual. Not for beauty, not even for comfort. Just rhythm, consistency. A way of separating day from night, as you comb your mind. Drifts to the festival that's coming up, Lemuria. The days when Romans appease restless spirits. You wonder if you'll need to create a special blend for it. Something somber, respectful, just unsettling enough to feel appropriate. You imagine a concoction of cypress, frankincense, and something faintly sour, maybe vinegar steeped with rosemary. A blend for ghosts. Or at least for those who want to smell like they respect them. Quirky detail. Some Romans believed tossing black beans over your shoulder could banish unwanted spirits. You once made a fragrance with black bean essence, more as a joke than a product, but your neighbor claimed it made her sleep better. You never told her what it contained. The night grows quieter still. The singer below has stopped, and the city seems to hold its breath. You decide to write a letter, just a short one, to your cousin in Massalia. She's started her own shop now, selling dyed cloth and herbs. You're proud of her. You tell her about the twins from earlier, about the cloaked mystery woman, about the galbanum experiment. You dip your stylus into the ink and write in a slow, looping hand. Each letter feels like incense laid gently onto hot coals, slow to rise, impossible to ignore. You seal it with a dab of rose oil, just a trace, and set it aside to be sent tomorrow. You prepare for bed, but not in haste. First, you open the small wooden box on your bedside table. Inside is a collection of scent-saturated cloths, private archive of failed or unfinished blends. Some are too bitter, some too sweet, some just ... strange. You sniff a few, choosing one with lavender and chamomile for the night. You tuck it near your pillow. It doesn't smell like dreams, but it smells like possibility. You lie down. The bed creaks. The sheet is cool against your skin, the air still carrying the warmth of day and the promise of breeze. You close your eyes. The city continues without you. That's all right. It always does. You think of the mystery woman again, of the lion-etched token, of Lucius and his clumsy joy, of Aurelia, cloaked in memory, of the vials you filled and the ones still waiting. You think of all the stories your shop contains, trapped in glass, waiting to be uncorked. Not tonight, but soon. And as you begin to drift, not quickly, but like perfume itself, slowly, with presence, you think one last thought. You are a seller of scent, but a keeper of silence. The kind of silence that lingers, the kind that remembers. And, for tonight, that is more than enough. The air in your shop is tinged with yesterday's oil's sharp myrrh. Cloying civet, that faint lemony ghost of spikenard, and, as the sun inches higher over the domes of the forum, the front door creaks open with its usual reluctant groan, letting in a shaft of golden light and the unmistakable sound of sandals scuffing marble. You don't have to look up to know who it is. That uneven cadence, half shuffle, half stride, belongs only to one person, old Gaius, the apothecary, who claims he once cured a senator's gout using boiled turnips and goat spit. He doesn't buy anything, never has, but he talks like he owns the place, like his opinions are the true currency in this district, and for whatever reason, you let him. Maybe it's the way he insists on correcting your Latin declensions, as if he were Cicero reborn. Maybe it's the way he smells of sage and damp scrolls. Or maybe it's just that his stories, as bizarre as they are, make the hours pass faster. Today he's grumbling about the latest craze among patrician women-infused hair oils. Not with cedar or thyme, but with crushed pearls. Actual pearls. They'll be rubbing diamonds on their elbows next, he mutters, sniffing dismissively at your array of clay pots. You nod sympathetically, though you've already got 2 orders for the stuff yourself. One from a senator's daughter, who couldn't pronounce frankincense, but knew exactly how to pout her way into a discount. As Gaius rattles on about the ridiculousness of upper-class vanity. You start filling a small flask with a new mixture: lavender, olive oil, a pinch of ground saffron intended for a customer with an allergy to beeswax. You're proud of this one. It's taken 3 tries to get the ratio right. And the last batch turned slightly green, which is not the message anyone wants their perfume to send. Behind Gaius, the street outside your doorway teems with activity. Slaves carrying baskets of figs, boys selling rolls of dyed wool, a stray cat trying to make a philosophical point to a pigeon. Somewhere, a lyre plucks a lazy tune, and the sky above is mercifully cloudless. You send Gaius off with a handful of dried rosemary and a lie about how it sharpens memory. Then turn your attention to the second order of the day, something discreet and unlabeled for a man whose name you're not supposed to write down. He requested musk, heavy musk, something to announce his arrival, and you suspect the man's ego could do that well enough on its own. Still, business is business. You grind the resin, mix the fixatives, and wrap the little vial in dyed linen, tying it with a cord the color of pomegranate seeds. As you tuck it into the delivery basket, your apprentice, the scrawny, allied boy with a nose like a kitchen hook, returns from the sabura with the herbs you asked for, minus the juniper. They were out, he shrugs, then sneezes into the crook of his elbow. You sigh and gesture toward the back where the mortars sit idle, and he slinks away, humming a war chant he definitely doesn't understand. Lunch comes late again. You nibble on leftover flatbread while writing out a label in your best script, careful to keep the ink from smudging in the heat. Someone once told you that illegible labels led to 2 things: lawsuits or unexpected love spells. You've had enough of both. Outside, the world clatters on. A donkey brays like it's giving birth to a philosopher. Someone's arguing about tax grain quotas. A burst of laughter erupts from the tavern across the alley, where the wine's always sour and the gossip sweet. You try not to get distracted, but the scent of grilled onions makes your stomach threaten a rebellion. You down a cup of watered wine and focus instead on the final task of the afternoon. Decanting a particularly expensive blend into the imported glass vial you keep hidden beneath the counter. It's for a wedding tomorrow, a match brokered between 2 families who hate each other only slightly less than they love money. The bride requested something that smells like an orchard in spring, but with undertones of destiny. You're not sure what that means, but the mixture of bergamot, cedar, and dried fig is the best you can do, and it smells like something a Roman goddess might wear to breakfast. As you work, you wonder briefly what it would be like to sell something else: spices, maybe, or poetry, but the thought passes quickly. Perfume is what you know. It's the stories you bottle, the reputations you rescue, the memories you manufacture, by the drop. Even when the customers are impossible, the hours long, and your feet feel like they're being punished for past lives, there's still that moment when someone uncorks the vial and breathes in that reminds you why you do this, even if they never say thank you. Even if they pretend the fragrance was their idea. Even if they forget your name. A shadow crosses the threshold. Another customer. You straighten your tunic, wipe the stray fleck of resin from your palm, and prepare your best "how can I help you" smile, the one that says yes, of course I have what you need. Even if I don't know what that is yet. Because here in Rome, where the baths are crowded and the temples never close, where senators rise and empires fall, and where love can hinge on a scent caught in passing, you've learned one unshakable truth: there will always be someone who wants to smell unforgettable. The new customer steps inside with the air of someone used to getting what they want. All wrapped in a gauzy tunic of sun-faded violet, one shoulder bare. The fabric artfully pinned with a bronze brooch shaped like a sea lion. Her sandals. "Don't scuff," they whisper. She smells like almonds and ambition. You know this type. You also know better than to ask questions. She doesn't speak at first, just tilts her chin, looks around, assessing not the shop, but you. As if she's wondering how much of your inventory is actually worth her time. Then, finally, something rare. You blink. For, she raises an eyebrow. Myself, obviously. Of course, rare how? You ask carefully. She pauses, runs her fingers lightly over a shelf of clay pots, tapping one with a nail painted a glossy black. Like a storm breaking at sea, she says at last, but subtle. I don't want to smell like weather. You fight the urge to laugh, and instead nod slowly, as if that were the most natural olfactory request in the world. She takes a seat on the little three-legged stool near your counter, crossing her legs like she's on a mosaic. You begin assembling the possible bass note. Iris. Crushed violet leaf and. She watches every move like a hawk dressed for a dinner party. It's not just scent she wants, it's mystery. Status. The kind of fragrance that makes someone turn around and remember your name years later without knowing why. You start with myrtle, just a hint. Then dried lilac. Then the difficult part. Osmanthus, an imported flower that smells oddly like apricots and leather. It's not fashionable right now, which is exactly why it will work. She leans forward. What's that? You glance at her. Something from the east, you say. A flower that only opens at dusk. She smiles faintly. Go on. So you do, adding a whisper of ambergris, a fragment of benzoin, a touch of roseader, to soften the sharpness. The mixture takes shape slowly, a perfume that doesn't scream but waits patiently to be noticed. When you finally let her test it on her wrist, she closes her eyes and says nothing for a long while. That's a good sign. You let the silence stretch. Outside, the sunlight flickers against your shelves, and you watch the dust hang mid-air like tiny ships adrift in golden fog. Finally, she opens her eyes. Wrap it. I'll take 2. 2. That's nearly a week's wages in one order. You suppress the surge of joy and nod with professional calm, handing her the freshly sealed vials, waxed and stamped. She leaves without giving her name, but the scent lingers like rain over marble. You don't know who she is, but you suspect she'll return. These types always do. You're barely finished wiping the bench when your apprentice, still sniffling from his allergy to air, pokes his head in to inform you that the markets started packing up early. Something about a funeral, he says, rubbing one eye with his sleeve. A praetor's wife. You nod. Perfume orders tend to spike around death, oddly enough. Everyone wants to smell respectful. Or at least not like despair. Sure enough, by the time you've finished reorganizing your samples, 2 older women enter the shop in widow's stolas, faces drawn and voices like well-oiled hinges. We need something appropriate, one says, but not too sad. The other nods. Something that says grief, but not poverty. You offer a blend of rosemary, cypress, and just a drop of white lily. They sniff, they murmur, they haggle. Eventually they leave with 2 amphorae and the slightly smug satisfaction of women who have done their duty and gotten a bargain. As the shadows begin to stretch, and the sun dips toward the horizon, your shop begins to shift into its evening rhythm. The smells intensify slightly less from your ingredients, and more from the city itself. Smoke from nearby braziers drifts through the door. Somewhere, someone's roasting something that smells faintly like pigeon, and entirely like home. Your apprentice sweeps lazily, raising more dust than he collects, but you let it go. He's young. And besides, the day is almost done. You take a moment to step outside and stretch, feeling the ache of standing in your ankles and a low buzz behind your eyes that only a long day of concentration can produce. The street is quieter now. A cart rattles past, pulled by a donkey who looks like it resents every god ever prayed to in this city. A woman haggles over garlic. A child tries to balance a stick on his nose. It's all ordinary, and in that ordinariness, there's comfort. You re-enter the shop, light the oil lamp, and begin inventory. It's tedious, but you don't mind. You like knowing exactly what you have, how much costmary is left, how many drops of jasmine absolute, whether your civet jar needs refilling or just a firm lid. These are the details that make up your world, strange and specific, like secret spells that only you know how to cast. You're halfway through counting. Sandalwood slivers when there's a soft knock at the doorframe. A young man, barely older than your apprentice, stands there, eyes downcast, holding a bunch of crushed daisies. "It's for a girl," he mumbles. "Her name's Vibia." You pause, consider, then pull out a small pot of something floral. And innocent as violet, a touch of honey water, and hand it over. He stares at it like it's a key to a future he didn't know he was allowed to dream about. "Thank you," he says, too quickly, before disappearing into the dusk. You smile to yourself and return to your notes, scribbling one more line in your ledger. One heart offered payment, hope. And isn't that perfume, really? A promise in liquid form. A dream you wear on your skin. The sun has nearly vanished behind the western rooftops of Rome, and your little shop is now wrapped in that in-between light that makes everything look softer and slightly unreal. The clay jars and tiny flasks glow in the lamp's flickering. Illumination like sacred objects, each holding not just scent, but possibility. You tie back your sleeves, preparing the final custom blend of the inventions. Repeat order from an older gentleman with a heavy limp and a taste for the obscure. He's a retired soldier, or so he says, and insists on a perfume that reminds him of the battlefields of Hispaniola. Pine, leather, and something elusive he always calls iron morning. You've never asked what that last bit means. You suspect it's not a scent at all, but a memory. A time of youth and war and sweat and comrades lost to the soil. You've replicated it 3 times now. The key, you've found, is in the use of smoked oak resin and a whisper of crushed coriander seed. He doesn't talk much while you mix. Just sits in the same chair every visit, resting his walking stick against the wall, gazing into the lamp. Flame. Once, months ago, he mentioned that he used to carry a perfumed cloth in his breastplate. Not for vanity, he said, but to remind him of home. His mother's lavender soap. You nodded at the time. You didn't ask more. That's the silent agreement between you and many of your clients. They don't have to explain. You don't have to judge. Tonight, when he arrives, his pace is slower than usual. His hair looks wider somehow. He enters without a word, sits, and exhales like the weight of the empire just slid off his shoulders. You begin the blend without needing to ask. The formula's already in your fingers, remembered by muscle and scent. He watches you work, eyes half-lidded. When you hand him the small file, he nods once, pockets it, and leaves a small folded note on your bench. You wait until the door creaks shut before reading it. 4 words, for the last time. You hold the note in your hand for a long time. Not because it surprises you. You've seen that look before, smelled that finality in a man's scent. Age doesn't always whisper. Sometimes it knocks. You return to your work in silence, cleaning your tools with slow precision. The pestle gets rinsed. The little ceramic bowls are wiped dry. You run a soft cloth over your measuring sticks, careful not to dislodge their fading ink marks. They've been with you since your apprenticeship, tools of trust, not science. Your apprentice pokes his head in again, this time holding a basket of dried hyssop and a hopeful expression. "Trade from the baker's wife," he explains. "She says the usual." The usual is a soft, cheerful blend that masks flour and yeast with orange blossom and elderflower, subtle enough not to offend the nostrils of early morning customers. You accept it, ruffle his hair, and gesture toward the back room. Store the hyssop, not near the vetiver this time. He nods, scurries off, and you hear the faint sound of jars clinking in his wake. You begin preparing her blend from memory, already picturing her flushed cheeks and flour-smeared sleeves. The baker's wife is one of your favorite customers, not because her needs are complex, but because her joy is so immediate. She always smells the final result, and smiles like she's been handed gold, even though what you give her is little, more than scented oil and reassurance. As you work, a soft wind drifts in through the open shutters. It carries with it the tang of evening fires and overripe figs, the distant laughter of children still playing in the alley, and a faint thread of sea salt from the Tiber. Rome breathes like a living thing at night, less proud than in the day, more vulnerable. You feel the city settle into its bones. Once her perfume is bottled and set aside, you take a moment to rest, just a moment. You sit on the bench near the door, sipping a small cup of watered wine you keep stashed under the counter for evenings. Like this tiring, slow, filled with small memories and strange silences. Your joints ache faintly. Your hands smell of 10 different things at once. You think of the first time you made perfume unsupervised. You were 12, too confident, and you burned the entire batch by boiling the myrrh too long. The shop reeked for days. Your master didn't scold you. He simply handed you a broom and said, "If you can't blend well, blend humility." You didn't forget that. These days, you teach your apprentice the same way. You've watched him oversteep rose petals, mismeasure sandalwood, nearly knock over your civet jar, which would have ended both his career and possibly his life, given the smell. But he's learning, slowly, earnestly. He doesn't yet understand that perfume isn't about luxury, it's about memory, longing, and the invisible ways we armor ourselves for the world. Your thoughts are interrupted by a distant sound, a trumpet call from the Capitoline Hill, ceremonial and short. Somewhere, a celebration is beginning. Maybe a wedding, maybe the return of a victorious magistrate. You'll smell it tomorrow, when guests come in reeking of spikenard and overindulgence. You finish your wine and rise, stretching once before beginning the final tidy of the evening. Everything in its place. Oils corked, herbs hung, rags rinsed and wrung. The fire in the brazier is nearly out, just a few coals glowing like tired eyes. You decide to leave them. A little heat for the night never hurts. You glance once more at the shelf of special orders. Bottles tagged with names and moods and odd requests. You run your finger along the tops, pausing briefly on one labeled simply, "For rainy days." A private blend, never sold, one you made for yourself. It smells of mint, ink, and damp cedarwood, like letters written during storms. You blow out the lamp. The room softens instantly, wrapped now in the dusky dark that precedes true night. Outside, the first stars have begun to flicker above the rooftops, faint pinpricks over the cradle of empire. You listen. Rome breathes. And so do you. You wake early, as always, even before the city begins to murmur. Your body has already registered the lightening of the eastern sky through the small opening in your shutters. It's not quite dawn yet, the hour when Rome belongs only to the bread makers and the ghosts, but your mind stirs with the weight of tasks already. You lie still for a moment longer, listening to the faint creak of timbers overhead, the distant shuffle of hooves on cobblestone, and the soft breathing of your apprentice in the next room, who dreams loudly and occasionally murmurs strange phrases like "left of the olive jar," or "tell the goat, not now." You try not to laugh. There's something innocent in his sleep-brambled chatter, and you let him rest. Eventually, you pull yourself up and out from the warm embrace of your rough linen bedding. You wash your face with cool water from the glazed pitcher you filled the night before, the chill sharpening your senses more efficiently than any philosophical text ever could. You dab a little rosewater under your nose, a habit not for vanity, but for focus. It helps you think. Rose is clarity in scent form, a soft anchor to your mind when the day starts to fray around the edges. You light the brazier, coaxing the coals from their slumber with careful breath and patient hands. The flame rewards you with the scent of yesterday's lavender stems, which you'd tucked beneath the fuel for precisely this moment. Your shop isn't open yet, but the day begins long before the first customer walks in. Inventory must be checked. Jars must be wiped down. Oils must be tested for spoilage. You can't afford to mistake one wrong note, and an entire blend is ruined. Not to mention the reputation you've spent a lifetime building. As you shuffle through the bundles of herbs hanging from the ceiling, hyssop, chamomile, galbanum, you hear the rooster crow in the next courtyard over, right on time. Your stomach growls in polite disagreement with your priorities, but you ignore it. Work first. There's a bowl of yesterday's lentils you'll eat later, probably while standing. Perfume may be art, but your routine is military. Midway through, sorting the saffron threads, delicate, absurdly expensive, and stored in a small ivory box like a stolen treasure. Your apprentice finally stumbles in, rubbing his eyes and still wearing his nightshirt. "I had the dream again," he mumbles, flopping onto the stool like a punctured wineskin. You raise an eyebrow, but don't stop sorting. The one with the talking donkey and the amphora full of vinegar. He nods solemnly. Only this time, the donkey was angry, said we were using the wrong cinnamon. You chuckle, mostly because he's sincere and slightly tragic at this hour. Remind me to dream more responsibly, you reply. He makes a vague salute, and yawns loud enough to startle the cat napping near the jars. The two of you work in tandem now, a comfortable rhythm built over seasons. He organizes the label's handwritten parchment tags attached with wax thread, while you test viscosity and scent integrity of each blend. You make notes with your stylus on a wax tablet, occasionally pausing to sniff, record, or swat his hand away from the honey jar, just as the sun finally breaks over the roofline. Casting its golden fingers through the narrow shop windows, there's a soft knock at the door. You glance at your apprentice. We're not open yet. He shrugs. Maybe it's the cinnamon donkey. You slide the door open, a finger's width. A young woman stands there, wrapped in a modest brown shawl, her face half hidden in its folds. Her eyes blue-gray, like river mist meets yours, with quiet urgency. Forgive the hour, she says softly, but I need something, for morning. You step aside without a word and let her in. Morning perfumes are among the trickiest. They must not be too fragrant, lest they signal vanity. They must not be entirely neutral, either, or they'll carry the scent of soap and obligation. A proper morning scent is like grief itself, controlled, dignified, and ever so slightly raw. You nod once to your apprentice, who knows better than to stay. He vanishes into the back. The woman explains that her husband passed 6 days ago. She cannot cry in front of her children. She needs something to carry with her, to touch to her wrist when her throat tightens, to breathe in when the air feels too thin. You listen. You don't speak much. Then you gather what she need. Cypress oil, crushed violet, a breath of smoke-infused myrrh, and just a trace of beeswax barely detectable, but warm. The blend is quiet, gentle, something that feels like hands clasped during silence, when she smells it. Her eyes brim, but do not spill. Yes, she whispers. You place the cork in gently, then hand it to her with both palms. She pays, thanks you, and leaves without another word. Once she's gone, your apprentice returns, unusually quiet. He watches you clean the tools again, slower this time, like polishing a memory instead of a jar. Will we make one like that again? He asks. You consider. Maybe, maybe not. Grief doesn't repeat itself. Neither should its scent. He nods, pretending to understand. Outside, the street begins to fill with life. Merchants shout, wheels rattle. The air thickens with the smell of baked bread and brined olives. You open the shutters wide now, letting Rome pour in like morning wine. You have a delivery to make this afternoon. To the domas of a senator's wife, who insists her perfume be stored in amphorae, as large as her ambition. You'll go, because she pays handsomely, even if her tastes are questionable. It's a chance to walk through the forum again, to nod at the statue of Livia, and wonder if she wore cinnamon oil, or preferred ambergris. Before you go, you mix a small phial for yourself. Just rosemary and mint. Clarity and coolness. The city demands a lot. Sometimes, even the perfumer needs a shield. You slip it into your sash, adjust your tunic, and step into the sunlight. Rome is fully awake now, and so are you. By the time you reach the Palatine slope, your feet are already coated in a fine film of dust from the morning's heat. Rome is not a city that stays still, even on the days when you wish it would. The sound of sandals scraping against stone, the murmur of distant prayers from a temple you can't quite see, and the occasional sharp caw of a crow from the forum rooftops all combine into a chorus of daily inevitability. You carry a small lacquered box tucked securely under your arm. Inside, sealed in wax-stoppered glass, rests a custom blend requested by one of your more frequent patrons. She is the wife of Senator Gellius, the kind of woman who talks with her hands and always seems to know what time a room is paying attention to her. She commissioned a fragrance that evokes moonlight on marble and command without cruelty, which is the sort of maddeningly vague order that both haunts and inspires. You crafted something soft but cold, iris root, white moss, a kiss of ambergris from a jar so rare you keep it hidden behind false stonework. You added a whisper of black fig to ground it. Too much, and she'll say it smells of kitchens. Too little, and she'll say it smells of nothing. You pass a market stall, where two vendors argue over the price of a spoiled melon. A child darts between them, laughing, holding a wicker basket of fig rolls. One drops, and you stoop to retrieve it before the street dogs claim it. The child thanks you shyly, and vanishes into the crowd. You shake your head, even when you try to hurry. The city insists on interruptions. At the senator's villa, you're led inside by a servant with the proud disinterest of someone who believes themselves indispensable. He doesn't look at you as he takes your name, nor when he gestures to the atrium with a flick that says wait here. So you wait. You always do. You stand beside a bubbling impluvium, pretending not to listen to the echo of sharp words floating down from a balcony above. Someone's marriage is not as harmonious as their garden decor suggests. Eventually, the lady descends draped in teal and ivory, with hair pinned high in coils that resemble seasnail shells. She smiles when she sees the box, and for a moment, her voice softens. Did you bring the one with the shadow notes? You nod, opening it just slightly for her to inhale. Her eyes close. Ah, you do understand me. You are paid generously and dismissed gracefully. Which is all you ever ask for. On your way out, a younger woman standing in the vestibule catches your eye. Perhaps a relative, perhaps a ward. She watches you intently, curious in a way that is quiet but absolute. You tip your head in polite acknowledgement. She says nothing, only disappears down another corridor, leaving you wondering what she smelled in the air. You spend the early afternoon resting in the shade of a colonnade near the baths of Titus. You don't bathe there, too crowded, too loud, but the shade is free, and the breeze carries faint wisps of pine resin from the nearby hills. You chew a bit of fennel and allow your thoughts to drift, not toward philosophy or finances, but toward color and temperature. How scent sometimes wears blue or gold in your mind, and how the right blend of vetiver and laurel can feel like silk over calloused hands. Later, you pass the apothecary, who once tried to sell you eucalyptus oil, with all the flourish of a You raise your brows as he waves from his stoop. He has a new assistant, a boy, no older than your apprentice was when he first arrived. The boy looks terrified of everything. You wish him luck silently. You pause at a shrine on your way home. It's not part of your daily route, but the mood nudges you. You light a small twist of incense, not one of your own, just a simple temple offering of juniper and ash. You don't ask for anything, not even protection. You just stand there, breathing the old, familiar smoke, the kind your grandmother used to light before market days. There's comfort in the ritual of it. Not everything fragrant must be complex. When you return to your shop, the light is shifting, turning that pale gold that makes every jar glow like a treasure hoard. Your apprentice is scribbling notes furiously, his tongue poking out the side of his mouth like a stubborn child concentrating on a game, experimenting. You ask, sliding a cloth over the counter. He jumps, trying to remember that idea I had during my nap yesterday. Something with basil and fig bark and maybe. He trails off. Juniper, you offer. He nods like you've just revealed the secrets of the cosmos. You spend the rest of the day making a small batch of hair oils for a midwife who visits tomorrow. She insists her blends carry a quiet power, and you've come to admire her. For it, your fingers work from memory now, as though they've memorized the music of each vial. You don't even need to label them. You'll know which is which, by smell, by weight, by the way the oil pools at the bottom of the glass. The cat, still unnamed, still indifferent, circles your feet, then hops onto the sill to watch the street. From her favorite perch, outside, the lanterns begin to flicker on. People shout for bread, for wine, for each other. The city slows but never stops. You step outside for one last breath of cool air. Someone nearby is roasting chestnuts. Their scent blends with the perfume trapped in your sleeves and the remnants of rosemary in your hair. You are tired, but not empty. There's a difference. Tomorrow will come, as it always does. The blends will be new, but the effort will be the same. And somewhere in the city, someone will need your work not just for pleasure, but for memory, for ceremony, for comfort. You lock the door behind you. Another day complete. Another small offering to the art of scent in the eternal hum of Rome. The next morning begins, as they often do early, sticky with warmth, even before sunrise. The sky hanging low with that syrupy Roman haze that clings to your skin and settles in your lungs like perfume gone sour. You wake before the street wakes, your eyes opening to the muted light, filtering through the woven reed blinds above your cot. The faint scent of sandalwood, still lingering from the satchel tucked beneath your pillow. It's a habit you picked up long ago, something soothing to sleep with, a soft aroma that tells your body it is safe. Even if your mind is still spinning with commissions, balances, ingredient stockpiles, and who still owes you for that rose petal, pomade, you delivered last Saturn's Day. You stretch legs groaning, spine clicking back into awareness, like a market tent pole snapping into place. The cat is already awake, or perhaps she never slept, crouched at the edge of your windowsill, like a carved onyx statue, tail flicking in judgment as she watches a butcher's boy dump yesterday's scraps for the street dogs. You don't speak. Not yet. Words will come later. You make your way to the basin near the back room, splashing cold water onto your face, the shock of it traveling down your neck, over your shoulders, reminding you that yes, today exists and will demand things from you. The oil in your hair has made your curls behave themselves, more or less, and you quickly twist them into a loose knot. No need for finery this early. No customers will knock for another hour, at least except for Rufus, of course, who doesn't count. He doesn't knock, he just stomps. And stomp he does. Right on cue. The heavy tread of sandals that don't quite fit, accompanied by the familiar grunt that's halfway between a greeting and a threat. He carries 3 wrapped parcels under his arm, raw beeswax from the temple of Juno, still flecked with gold, dust from the altar candles. Early drop, he says. They said you'd want it fresh. You nod, offering him a sliver of dried fig and an absent smile. I always do. He lingers longer than necessary, eyeing the shelf where your apprentice has placed last week's unsuccessful experiments. One jar is swelling slightly, the lid puffed up as though the perfume inside is fermenting like bad wine. Rufus gestures toward it. That one smells like goat armpits. You make a mental note to dispose of it quietly. Once he's gone, you set to work, grinding rose petals into a fine pulp with a mortar so smooth it has its own shine. The rhythm is meditative: circle, press, scrape, breathe. You whisper measurements to yourself as you work. 2 spoons of poppy oil, 1 crushed cardamom seed, 3 drops of myrrh resin. Your hands move with confidence, but your mind drifts back to a memory of your grandmother, sitting on a stool exactly like this one, telling you how the emperors used to scent their sleeves so that every movement left a trail of fragrance. She said Cleopatra once scented the sails of her ship with rosewater so potent it was smelled a mile before she arrived. You don't know if that's true, but it's beautiful. Historians still argue whether scent in ancient politics was symbolism or seduction. Or maybe both. A bell above your door jingles lightly. It's not a loud bell. You chose it precisely because it announces visitors gently, like a polite cough, instead of a bark. The woman who enters is new early 20s, hair braided in the northern style, eyes scanning every surface like she's memorizing them. She introduces herself as Livia, the niece of a retired courtesan who once bought your saffron balm in bulk. I want something memorable, she says. You ask her what for. A wedding, she answers. Mine. You nod and reach for your wooden box of sample notes. Your fingers hover over lavender, then veer toward cinnamon. A wedding calls for joy but also armor. A perfume must do both. You let her smell each component, watching how her face reacts. You notice she smiles when she inhales vetiver, but frowns at ylang ylang. You offer her a blend of frankincense, orange blossom, and a trace of fig milk. She smells it, then pauses, eyes wide. This, she says, smells like bravery. You don't reply, only smile again and start pouring it into a small vial, sealing it with warm wax before pressing your signet ring into the top. She pays in silver denarii and leaves with the bottle wrapped in linen. You watch her go, wondering how many brides will wear your work today. After lunch bread with olive paste and a fig that's already too soft, you take inventory. You're low on civet, dangerously low on storax bark, and nearly out of cedar oil. You make a list, tucking it behind the amphora, labeled urgent in red wax. Tomorrow, maybe. Today you're too full of fragments of wedding wishes, of Rufus's stomp, of the goat armpit experiment that's now gently hissing on the shelf. Mid-afternoon brings a lull. Your apprentice has vanished, likely to flirt with the baker's daughter, and the street hum has mellowed to a sleepy drone. You take this moment to open your book of recipes. It's not fancy, just a leather-bound ledger filled with ink blots and thumb smudges and the occasional pressed violet. But it's sacred in a way nothing else is. You flip to a page marked with a chicken feather and reread the formula for Seaborn Wind, a scent you haven't made in 3 years. It was a disaster commercially, but you loved it. Green myrtle, crushed lime, bitter almond, a trace of salt. No one else understood it. But you might try again soon. The city could use a breeze. Later, when the sun hangs low and red over the rooftops, you take a stroll. You don't lock the shop. Your neighbor, a retired mosaic artist, watches over it with the vigilance of a gladiator on holiday. You trust her more than any doorbolt. Your walk is slow. Not for errands, just for breath. You pass temples and taverns and bathhouses whose marble has gone warm from sun and time. You pass old men arguing about grapes and a child chasing a chicken and a couture cat, likely balanced on the wall. Ignoring you completely, you pause near the river. The Tiber is a mirror in the low light, rippling gently with the occasional passing skiff. A merchant washes his hands in the shallows, and a girl tosses dried herbs into the water, perhaps for luck or memory or something in between. You can't smell the river. Not really. It smells like everything done, nothing like stone and fish and dreams half washed away. But you still breathe it in. When you return to the shop, the first star is visible above the roofline. You light a small oil lamp, then another. The air smells like night. You pour yourself a cup of wine, lightened with honey and rosemary, and sip slowly while watching the flame dance inside its glass cradle. Tomorrow will ask for new things. But for now, you let the day settle into your bones like warm balm, and rest in the hush of your scented sanctuary. The next day begins with a sharp knock at the door, just as the sky shifts from navy to pewter. Not quite light and not quite dark, that in-between moment when the city holds its breath before bursting into noise. You're already awake, of course. Sleep clings to you the way civet oil does, stubborn, elusive, leaving its mark even after you scrub your mind clean. You rise from your cot with a creak in your back and an ache in your calves. Yesterday's stroll was longer than you realized. Your joints agree. The knock comes again, louder this time. You mutter something unflattering in Greek and shuffle to the door barefoot, still tying your linen wrap over your shoulders. When you open it, a man you vaguely recognize stands before you, damp with morning dew and flustered like a pigeon chased from its perch. He introduces himself as Marcus, a courier from the Domos of Senator Claudius Vitellius. Apparently, the senator's wife has taken an interest in your perfumes and would like a private consultation, preferably today. Before noon, she is particular, Marcus says delicately. You smirk. They always are. You make arrangements quickly, scribbling ingredients you'll need to bring, brushing your hair with one hand while cramming small glass vials into a padded basket with the other. No time for proper breakfast, so you grab a date and a wedge of salty cheese, wrapping them in cloth to eat on the road. The streets are already waking as you head out, vendors setting up stalls, laundry flapping like banners of surrender from windows. The mingled scent of fresh bread and last night's ashes curling through the alleys. Your feet carry you past familiar shops, the sandal maker, who sings off-key as he hammers, the woman who sells honeyed almonds and always gives you one extra for luck. You nod to them, but don't stop. The senator's domus is in the Palatine Hill District, an area where marble and ego shimmer in equal measure. It's guarded by 2 young men who clearly take themselves too seriously, their armor gleaming with polish and a complete lack of combat. You're led through a series of courtyards blooming with meticulously arranged roses, too perfect, too symmetrical, like they were grown under threat. When you finally reach the lady of the house, she's reclining on a cushioned bench in a room that smells like wealth, not richness wealth. There's a difference. Richness is the sticky sweetness of fig syrup, the heavy waft of spikenard oil. Wealth smells colder, more controlled. A mix of polished stone, rare incense, and the faintest trace of someone else's labor. She doesn't look up at first. You wait, it's a game. She'll speak when she wants to be impressed. Finally, she gestures to your basket with 2 fingers. Let's begin, she says. You nod and begin unwrapping vials, explaining notes. Letting her sniff, resign smeared linen, crushed herbs, oil-swabbed tablets. She listens with the expression of someone trying to decide whether they're insulted. You describe the way marjoram can ease headaches, how labendum clings like memory, how a trace of mint can brighten a scent without overpowering it. She finally reacts when you mention violet root soaked in almond oil. That, she says, is what my mother used to wear. It is not a compliment, but it is a clue. You pivot quickly, offering a blend of saffron and crushed white lily, finished with a drop of green fig sap. She inhales, pauses, then says, "Make it stronger." You comply. She finally smiles briefly like a fox. You've passed the test. The rest is negotiation. She places an order for 3 bottles, each, to be delivered weekly, and pays you with a coin purse heavy enough to make your wrist ache. You leave quickly, before she can change her mind or grow bored. The walk home is quieter. You cut through an alley where someone is gutting fish, the stench of brine and scale jolting you back into yourself. You pass a group of children, chasing a goose, their laughter bouncing off the walls like music written by chaos. One of them nearly knocks your basket from your hand and yells a quick "Sorry, Auntie," without stopping. You are not their aunt. You forgive them anyway. Back at the shop, your apprentice is waiting miraculously, unpacking herbs from a basket lined with cloth. "The mint was half price today," he announces proudly, "but it looks a little sad." You inspect the leaves. He's right. They're wilted, but salvageable, if dried quickly. You nod, and he grins, like a dog given a bone. You spend the next hour restocking shelves, labeling new jars, and sweeping the floor with a broom that's shedding more bristles than it's collecting dust. A jar of coriander slips from his hands, but somehow doesn't break. The gods are in a good mood today. Later in the afternoon, a regular customer arrives, Lucia, an older widow, who always brings gossip with her coins. Today, she's heard rumors of a new law requiring vendors to list all ingredients publicly. They say it's for safety, she scoffs. But I think it's so the elites can steal our secrets. You laugh, half in agreement. Historians still argue whether Rome's obsession with regulation was about order or about control. Probably both. You promise to look into it and offer her a free sachet of clove-laced cedar shavings. She calls you a saint, which you are not, but it's nice to hear evening falls slowly. You mix a new batch of oil in the back room, humming to yourself as you stir. The scent is unfamiliar. Lend you, invented on a whim, without recipe or reason. It smells like summer rain on baked clay, like something you've dreamed of, but never touched. You set it aside, unsure whether it's brilliant or awful. Some things require sleep to decide. Dinner is simple. Lentils with garlic, a piece of flatbread still warm from the oven. You eat while perched on your stool, watching the shadows stretch across the shop floor. The oil lamp flickers once, then steadies. You consider lighting another, then decide against it. Let the darkness have its say. You've had enough light for one day. Before bed, you write down a few notes: ingredients to buy, formulas to tweak, questions to research. Then you pull out a folded scrap of parchment tucked behind the apothecary ledger. It's old ink, fading, corners frayed. A list of names, half of which you've crossed out. Teachers, mentors, rivals, people who once shaped your path, who once smelled your creations and told you who you were. You add a new name, Livia, the bride. She belongs on the list now. You climb into bed, stretching like a cat. The cot creaking beneath you in approval or complaint. The moonlight slants across the floor in a crooked line, catching the edge of a glass vial on your work table. It glows, faintly, as if holding a piece of the night inside. You sigh deeply and close your eyes. Another day gone. Another scent bottled. Another memory sealed in wax and breath. Morning drips slowly through the shutters, like honey off a spoon. Thick and golden, reluctant to start, but inevitable nonetheless. You lie still for a moment, tangled in your linen blanket, half listening to the distant scrape of a broom on stone. Somewhere down the street, and the hollow clip of hooves as a cart rolls past. Your eyelids protest, your joints creak, their usual chorus, but your mind is already stirring with the scent recipes you dreamt about. At least think you did. One of them involved pine resin and something like toasted fennel. It smelled like a festival in the mountains. You make a note to try it later. Assuming it wasn't just the remains of last night's garlic talking in your sleep. You rise, stretch, wince, and begin the day with the familiar rituals. Water from the jug, cold against your cheeks, a quick comb through your hair, and a pinch of salt under your tongue, an old habit from your mother. Meant to chase away dreams before they follow you into daylight. You crack open the shutters, letting in the soft glow of a Roman morning. It smells faintly of fresh bread and yesterday's dust. The street is quieter than usual, but there's an unease in the air, like the city is waiting for something. Or maybe it's just you. You check your storage first. The lavender oil is running low, and the rosewater you strained last week has turned a little cloudy. It's still usable, but it won't last long. You make a list on a clay tablet with a dull stylus, then wrap yourself in your cleanest tunic and prepare to visit the forum's herb stalls. Your apprentice is nowhere to be seen, probably asleep under a table somewhere. You leave a note and a fig in his bowl. Fair trade, the forum is already busy, even though the sun has barely cleared the rooftops. Traders shout over each other. Baskets bump shoulders, and someone's child is crying about a dropped honey cake. You weave through the chaos like a fish through reeds, nodding to familiar faces, pausing only to sniff a bundle of mint that's clearly gone off. You eventually find a spice merchant who greets you like an old friend, and tries to charge you like a new enemy. After some haggling that borders on theater, you walk away with 2 bundles of marjoram, a tiny jar of cinnamon oil, and a small pouch of something the merchant claims is imported from Nubia. It smells like wealth, he promises. You smell it. It smells like moss and ambition. You buy it anyway. On the way home, you pass the temple of Castor and Pollux, where a priest is sweeping petals from yesterday's ceremony. You wonder, not for the first time, what the gods might smell like. If divine presence had a scent, would it be sharp and ozone-slick like lightning, or gentle like warmed myrrh on skin? Historians still argue whether temples used perfumes purely for ritual, or also to mask the less divine odors of crowds and sacrifices. Either way, you make a mental note to try a blend inspired by divinity, just subtle now, to make people feel blessed, but not suspicious. Back in your workshop, your apprentice has returned, bleary-eyed, and muttering about dreams involving a talking goat. You hand him the mint and send him to crush dried lavender, while you carefully open the Nubian pouch and take a deeper sniff. The scent is layered, sweet at first, then bitter, then something smoky and strange. Not unpleasant, just unfamiliar. You smile, that's rare. You test a few drops in warmed oil, watching the color swirl like ink in water. It darkens slightly, then settles into a pale amber hue. You dab a trace on your wrist. The scent lingers, like a half-remembered story. Later in the afternoon, you have a visitor. An older gentleman, dressed plainly but with a certain precision that suggests money tucked neatly out of sight. He introduces himself as Gallus, once a soldier, now a collector of rare curiosities. He's heard about your work, he says, from someone important. Important in this case could mean powerful, or just loud. Either way, it means you listen. Gallus doesn't want a perfume for himself. He wants you to recreate one, something his wife used to wear before she passed. It smelled like the sea, he says, and almonds. And something else I can't quite place. You nod. Memory is funny like that. It hoards scents and scatters the words. You ask questions. What time of year did she wear it? Did she make it herself? Was it strong, subtle, oily, sharp? He answers carefully, like he's handling something fragile. You promise to try. He thanks you and leaves a generous deposit. As the door closes behind him, you sigh. Recreating a ghost is no easy task. But maybe that's what perfumers do best. Evening settles in slowly, and with it, a low hum of anticipation. There's a festival tomorrow, the Feast of Florand. The city is already stretching into celebration. Girls with flower garlands chase each other through alleys, and musicians practice tunelessly on corners. You take the opportunity to prepare a batch of flower-based oils, not the expensive kind, but festive blends: orange blossom with clove, elderflower with fennel seed, violet with a whisper of pepper. You'll sell them in small vials tomorrow, wrapped in ribbon and optimism. As the light fades, you light the lamps and begin to clean your tools. The shop smells like everything: oil, herbs, crushed petals, worn wood. It's a good smell. Home, you look over your notes again, considering the sea almond blend for Gallus. Sea salt is easy enough, dissolved and distilled. Almond can come from crushed nuts, or sweet marzipan paste if you're bold. But the third scent, the missing piece, that's harder. You test a few things. Myrrh, no. Too heavy. Lemon, too sharp. Then you try a touch of fennel, and pause. It fits. Unexpected, but right. Like a forgotten key sliding into an old lock. Before sleep, you write it down. Sea almond, fennel, call it the shoreline. You cap the vial and set it aside, letting the scent settle overnight. You'll test it again tomorrow, maybe on linen. Some scents lie until they touch cloth. You stretch, yawn, and douse the lamp, the flame hissing like a sigh. You crawl into bed, mind buzzing gently with scents and stories. The windows open a crack, and you can hear laughter from the street. A flute playing somewhere far off, the faint pop of a fireworks trial. You smile, curl into the blanket, and breathe in the perfume of the day. Salt, almond, hope. The morning air rolls into your room like a soft exhale, thick with the scent of last night's revelry and early market preparations. Bitter orange peels, stale wine on worn cobblestones, and just a hint of smoke from someone's overzealous breakfast fire. The sun hasn't fully crested the rooftops yet, but you can already hear the sing-song call of the bread sellers echoing between the narrow walls of the alley. Advertising loaves shaped like crescent moons and crisscrossed with sesame. You stretch slowly, your limbs heavy with sleep and the weight of dreams that faded too fast. There was something about vines in your dream, or maybe ropes. Hard to tell. You blink it away and roll to your feet, barefoot on cool tiles that still remember the night. Today is the Feast of Flora, goddess of flowers, joy, and everything delightfully unnecessary, which means you, a humble perfume seller with a dozen floral blends sitting in stoppered glass, are suddenly a crucial part of Rome's happiness. You take a moment to savor the irony, then begin your morning routine. No time for elaborate rituals. Today, you rinse your face in rosewater, yesterday's batch, still fragrant tan dress quickly in your second-best tunic. The one with embroidered hem you pretend not to care about. Your apprentice is already awake, for once, and has taken it upon himself to set out the perfumes for the day. Some are lined up perfectly. Others seem to have lost an argument with gravity. You fix them with a look. He shrugs. Progress together. You carry the perfume crates through the maze of alleys toward the public garden near the Aventine Hill, where the main festival will bloom. This is not your usual market spot. No, today you trade under silk canopies and paper garlands, next to sweetmeat vendors and wine sellers with red-stained smiles. Musicians are warming up in the corner, tuning their lyres and flutes with the patience of men who know they'll be ignored until someone decides to dance. You claim a shaded spot between a candlemaker and a woman selling dyed scarves, and begin your setup. Each bottle is laid out with intention. The rose blend goes front, and center, always popular, always a safe choice. The wilder things, the sandalwood cypress experiment, the honey lavender leek concoction you're still not entirely sure about, they stay toward the edges. For adventurous noses, a few curious passers-by drift in early, dipping wooden sticks into your bottles and sniffing cautiously, like they're afraid of being seduced or poisoned. Both have happened in history, though never by you. Yet by mid-morning, the festival is in full swing. Trumpets blare, silk flags wave, and petals rain from balconies as women in floral crowns parade by laughing. It's not just a celebration of the goddess, it's a declaration that life is meant to be beautiful, at least for a day. You find yourself smiling more than usual. A girl, no older than 10, asks if she can smell all your perfumes, and chooses the orange blossom one because it smells like my grandmother's hugs. You give her a tiny vial for free. Your apprentice pretends to disapprove, but you see him doing the same thing moments later, for a shy boy, too nervous to ask. Around noon, a senator's wife appears, draped in layers of gauzy fabric that shimmer like rain-washed marble. She leans in to smell your almond rose blend, then looks you dead in the eye and says, "It reminds me of my first kiss." You don't know what to say, so you nod and offer her a discount. She declines it, drops 3 gold coins into your dish, and walks away with a perfume bottle in each hand. Your apprentice's jaw hits the table. "We could buy a new furnace with that," he whispers. You nod. "Or a better ceiling for the shop. Or both. Or, realistically, save it for next month's olive oil shortage. Roman life, after all, is never just scented oils and sunshine." In the late afternoon, the crowd swells, and the music turns livelier. A group of dancers spin through the square, tossing flower petals into the air, which stick to sweaty foreheads and the sticky hands of children clutching honeycakes. Someone gets too excited near your table and knocks over 3 bottles. Only one breaks, and thankfully it's the mint lavender lemon balm that hadn't been selling anyway. You declare it a free incense demonstration and move on. Near sunset, Gallus returns. He stands quietly at the edge of your stall while you finish explaining to an elderly couple why one perfume smells like the feeling of wearing clean linen. When they leave, he steps forward and lifts the small bottle labeled the Shoreline. He opens it, inhales once, and goes very still. Then, without a word, he takes out a coin pouch, leaves it on the table, and walks away. You do not count it. You do not call after him. Some things are too delicate for words. As you recork the test bottle, your apprentice says softly, "What was in that one?" You smile. "Memory," you reply, "and a bit of fennel, but mostly memory." The sun sets like a wink, and the lights of Rome come on one by one: torches, lanterns, cooking fires, and the wild glow of celebration. You pack up slowly, careful not to crush any stray flower petals still stuck to your wares. Your feet ache. Your head hums. Your apron smells like 20 different things, none of them unpleasant. You've sold nearly everything, and for once, you're not dreading the inventory. Back home, you and your apprentice sip watered wine and nibble on cheese and olives. He asks if you'll make another batch of the Shoreline. You say, maybe. Or maybe something new. Maybe something that smells like tonight. Warm stone, garden air, and success. He yawns. You wave him off, and soon you're alone, the workshop dim except for a single oil lamp flickering by the door. You sit quietly, listening to the sounds outside: laughter, footsteps, the sudden thump of someone falling and swearing. About it, Rome, in all her chaos. You light a small cone of incense, just for yourself, not for sale. Just scent curling through the air like a ribbon. You close your eyes and inhale. It smells like flowers crushed under a sandal, like spilled wine on dusty marble, like the hand of someone familiar brushing your cheek. It smells like Rome. You lie back, exhale, and feel the perfume of your city settle over you like a second blanket. The night is quiet now, or as quiet as it gets. Tomorrow, you'll make more blends, more memories. But for now, you just breathe. Morning returns, not with a thunderclap, but with the gentlest sigh of light through the slats of your shutter. The aroma of the city has shifted once again from the honeyed chaos of Flora's feast to something quieter. Something like bread, and damp earth, and the smoke of yesterday curling down alleyways like it's tired too. Your eyes flutter open as the first pale rays paint long golden lines across your ceiling. It's the kind of slow dawn Rome gives you after a day of indulgence. As though she herself needs time to gather her skirts and prepare for the next thing. Your limbs ache, not from one large exertion, but from a dozen tiny labors performed with love. Your hands, steady as they cap bottles, as they measure drops, now tremble ever so slightly as you stretch. The apprentice is still asleep. You can hear his soft, rhythmic snoring from the adjoining room, like a well-fed puppy curled into a sunbeam. You rise without hurrying. Today holds no festival, no visiting senators' wives, no garlands to compete with. Today is just yours. And yet you know it will fill itself. The way a blank scroll always does, never remaining unwritten for long. You wash your face again in rosewater, diluted now from overuse, but still sweet. The mirror, beside your wash basin, cloudy from age, and perhaps a few drops of unguent splatter, shows your reflection with a sort of soft kindness. There are fine lines now where laughter and stress have etched themselves, but your eyes are clear. You smell faintly of last night's incense, something warm and woody and fading, and you decide not to fight it. Let that be today's perfume. Let today be unscripted. Downstairs, the shop is still as a temple. Each shelf is lined with neat rows of bottles, some full, some awaiting refill, some merely decorative with their cloudy tinctures and ancient dust. You run your hand over the counter, a familiar glide across worn wood, and past the dent where a bottle of elderflower oil cracked last spring. You remember the mess, the wasted stock, the smell that lingered for days like a ghostly bouquet. You remember cursing the apprentice, and then laughing about it over fig bread and wine. This shop has been your stage, your sanctuary, your story. You begin your slow inspection. This is a ritual, though not religious, and less reverence for precision counts. You check the corks, wipe the smudges, align the labels. You note which blends are running low. The rosemary cypress is popular this season. You'll need to restock. You mentally list what you'll need from the herbalist: fresh orris root, more bergamot, perhaps a bit of thyme. Not because it sells, but because you love the way it smells when it meets heated oil, like rain and soil, making up after a quarrel. Mid-morning arrives quietly. The shop bell jingles, not urgently, just a polite reminder that the world is awake. A regular customer enters, an older man with stooped shoulders and a purple sash that's seen better days. He always buys the same scent, crushed fig and olive. He never smiles. But today he pauses, looks around at the way you've rearranged the display, and says, "Looks nice." You thank him, startled by the compliment, and hand him the little bottle already corked and ready. He leaves without further comment. You smile long after he's gone. Later, a young woman arrives. Not a customer yet, you think, just someone curious. She hovers near the door, eyes darting from vial to vial. You invite her in gently, offer her a tester of the saffron vanilla blend. She sniffs, hesitates, then whispers, "This reminds me of my mother." You nod, say nothing. Let the scent speak. She buys it with 2 bronze coins and leaves quickly, holding the bottle as if it might vanish. You don't chase the story. Some people aren't ready to share. Others tell you everything by mid-afternoon. The apprentice stumbles down, hair like a bird's nest, and mutters about hunger. You hand him a fig and some goat cheese, and he devours it with the urgency of youth. Then, sensing the calm of the shop, he offers to organize the sandalwood stocks. You accept, knowing it will take him twizzy as long and be half as neat, but knowing also that he's trying. And trying matters more than perfection. You spend the next hour writing new labels in your practiced script. Curled letters like ivy creeping across parchment. Moonlit cypress, hearth and honey, salt wind. You pause at that one. It's new, not based on any existing blend. But you already know how it should smell: sharp, fresh, a little melancholy. Like memories of the sea without the salt in your throat. You set the blank bottle aside. That one will come to life soon enough. A distant thunderclap rolls in, just as you light the oil lamp for evening. The day has slipped through your fingers like silk, leaving a pleasant residue of soft interactions, small successes, and tiny details only you would remember. The storm doesn't scare you. In fact, you welcome it. Storms carry scent like no other, turning cobblestone to loam iron to ozone, rain into a perfume all its own. You crack the window just enough to let it in, and yes, there it is. That first petrichor note, singing of things ancient and clean. The apprentice returns with sandalwood all over his tunic. You don't scold him. Instead, you teach him how to filter the dust and keep the good chips. He listens. He always listens, even if he forgets by morning. You suspect he'll make his own shop someday, with his own blends and his own mistakes. You hope he names one after you. Something strange and comforting. Evening folds itself over Rome like a sleeping cat. The lamps outside glow soft orange, their light caught in rain droplets. You count the bottles, again. You adjust a crooked sign. You put away the fig you didn't eat, then you sit. For once, you sit. You look at the wall where you've hung the dried herbs, some faded, some fresh. You listen to the dripping eaves. You let the rhythm of the rain match your breath. Out-scented, unscented, alive. And that's when the knock comes, not the bell. A knock, a firm, deliberate sound. You rise, curious but not alarmed, and open the door to find a woman you've never seen before, cloaked in traveling leathers with a brooch in the shape of a dove. She holds out a small cloth-wrapped bundle and says, "I was told to bring this. Here." You take it, unwrap it slowly, and find a vial, empty, but sealed with wax that bears the emblem of your first teacher, the one who taught you the value of silence and scent. You look up, the woman is gone. You close the door. You hold the vial. You do not speak. You will find what this means later, but for now, you place the empty bottle beside the others. You label it with a single word, message. You blow out the lamp. The storm carries on. The scent of rain and sandalwood fills the room. And you, the humble keeper of bottles and memories, let the day exhale with you into sleep. And now, dear listener, as the rain quiets and the lanterns dim in that tiny Roman shop, you begin to feel the soft edges of sleep wrapping gently around your thoughts. The jars have been sealed. The counters wiped clean. The final notes of lavender, myrrh, and aged cedar float lazily through the quiet air, like music fading at the end of a long, warm concert. You've walked through ancient alleys, listened to whispering jars, and traced the lives of those who lived by scent, by routine, by touch, just as you are now sinking into something soft and familiar. Let your mind wander, not fast and frantic, but slow and aimless, like smoke rising from a sleepy brazier. You've earned the stillness. There's no more work tonight, no bottles left to fill, no footsteps to answer, just the calm hush of a world that once was, is in the feeling of knowing you've been there. Maybe not with your body, but certainly with your imagination, which is far older, wiser, and more curious than we give it credit for. So rest now, breathe in deeply, exhale even slower. You're safe, you're home, and the stories will still be here tomorrow, right where you left them, one dusty vial, one crooked label, one quiet heartbeat at a time. If you've drifted off somewhere along the way, let me know in the comments below. Sweet dreams. Thanks for spending your night with me. Until next time.